Welcome, dear listener. Before you close your eyes and drift into the realm of dreams, I want you to do something for me. Take a deep breath in, hold it for just a moment, and slowly release it. Feel the tension leaving your shoulders, your neck, your entire body relaxing into wherever you are right now. Whether you're lying in bed, resting on a couch, or simply taking a moment of peace in your busy day, you are exactly where you need to be. Now here's something that might keep you listening just a little while longer before sleep takes you. What if I told you that everything you think you know about the pyramids of Egypt is only the surface of a mystery so profound, so ancient, and so deliberately hidden that even after 5,000 years, we are still discovering secrets that challenge everything we believe about human history? What if the greatest structures ever built by human hands contain messages meant specifically for a future civilization, perhaps our own, waiting patiently in stone for someone to finally understand? Tonight, I'm going to take you on a journey unlike any other. We're going to travel back through the mists of time, across the sands of the desert, under the blazing Egyptian sun and the cool star-filled nights, to witness the rise of monuments that have watched empires crumble and civilizations vanish, yet still stand as silent guardians of secrets we are only beginning to comprehend. But before we begin this ancient voyage together, I have a small request. I would love to know where you're listening from tonight. Are you in a cozy bedroom in New York City, with the sounds of the metropolis humming softly outside your window? Perhaps you're in a quiet village in England, where the rain is gently tapping against your roof. Maybe you're in Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Sydney, or a small town whose name I've never heard but would love to know. Wherever you are in this beautiful world of ours, please leave a comment below and tell me where you're listening from, what time it is there, and if you'd like, share what brought you here tonight. Are you struggling to sleep? Do you love ancient mysteries? Are the pyramids something that has fascinated you since childhood? I read every single comment, and knowing that people from all around the world are drifting off to sleep together, connected by these ancient stories, brings me more joy than you could possibly know. And if this story helps you find peace tonight, if it carries you gently into restful sleep, please consider subscribing to this channel and sharing it with someone you love who might also need a peaceful escape into the mysteries of the ancient world. Your support means everything, and it allows me to continue creating these journeys for you. Now, let your eyes grow heavy, let your breathing slow, and let me take you back, far, far back, to a time when the world was younger, when the stars seemed closer, and when humanity reached toward the heavens in ways we are still struggling to understand. The year is approximately 2560 BCE, though of course the ancient Egyptians would not have marked time the way we do. For them, time was measured in the reigns of god-kings, in the flooding of the sacred Nile, in the cycles of the sun god Ra, as he made his eternal journey across the sky. The land we now call Egypt was then known as Kemet, the Black Land, named for the rich dark soil deposited by the annual floods of the Nile that gave life to everything and everyone. Picture yourself standing on the Giza plateau. The air is warm but not unbearable, for it is early morning and the sun has only recently risen above the eastern horizon. The sky is painted in shades of gold and amber and deep, eternal blue. Before you rises something that takes your breath away, something that even now, 5,000 years later, continues to inspire the same sense of awe and wonder and beautiful, terrifying incomprehension. The Great Pyramid of Khufu. It rises from the desert like a man-made mountain, its limestone casing stones gleaming white in the morning light, so bright that it almost hurts to look at directly. The pyramid is not the weathered, stepped structure you might picture from modern photographs. No, in this moment, it is perfect. Its sides are smooth, covered in highly polished Torah limestone that reflects the sunlight like a mirror. Some ancient accounts suggest that the very tip of the pyramid, the pyramidion at its apex, was covered in gold or electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. Imagine that a mountain of white stone crowned with gold, catching the first rays of the morning sun and sending beams of light across the entire plateau, visible for miles in every direction. The pyramid stands 481 feet tall, making it the tallest structure in the entire world, and it will hold that record for nearly 4,000 years until the construction of Lincoln Cathedral in England in 1311 CE. Think about that for a moment. For almost 4 millennia, nothing built by human hands anywhere on the planet surpassed the height of this structure. It is not merely a tomb, it is a statement, a declaration, a challenge to time itself. But how? How was such a thing possible? This is the question that has haunted archaeologists, engineers, historians, and dreamers for centuries. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, we're going to explore every answer that has ever been proposed and some secrets that have never been fully revealed. Let us begin with what we know for certain. The Great Pyramid is composed of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. The average weight of these blocks is about 2.5 tons, though some of the granite blocks used in the king's chamber weigh as much as 80 tons. The base of the pyramid covers an area of 13 acres and is level to within just 2.1 centimeters across its entire expanse. The sides of the base are aligned to the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree. Modern engineers have stated that this level of precision would be difficult to achieve even with today's technology. Close your eyes and breathe deeply as you consider this. 5,000 years ago, without satellites, without computers, without laser levels or GPS, ancient builders achieved a precision that we struggle to replicate today. How? Why? What knowledge did they possess that we have lost or that we have never truly understood? The traditional explanation, the one you will find in most history books, goes something like this. The pharaoh Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops, ordered the construction of his eternal resting place around 2058 BCE. Over a period of approximately 20 years, a workforce of tens of thousands of laborers quarried, transported, and placed the millions of stones that would form the pyramid. They used copper tools, wooden sledges, ramps of sand and mud, and the sheer power of human muscle and determination. And you know what? There is evidence to support this explanation. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of workers' villages near the Giza Plateau. They have found the bones of laborers who were clearly well fed, who received medical treatment for injuries, who were buried with respect rather than discarded like slaves. They have found administrative papyri, ancient documents that record the daily operations of pyramid construction, including the delivery of food, the organization of work crews, and the transportation of stone blocks by boat. One of the most remarkable discoveries came in 2013, when a collection of papyri was found in a cave at Wadi al-Jarf, a port on the Red Sea. These documents, now known as the Diary of Mirror, were written by an overseer named Mirror, who was responsible for a team of about 200 workers. The papyri describe the transportation of limestone blocks from the Tura quarries across the Nile to the Giza construction site. They mention the names of specific work crews, the quantities of stone moved, and the daily operations of what was clearly an immense and highly organized construction project. So we have evidence that the pyramids were built by human hands, using human ingenuity and human labor. And yet, questions remain. Mysteries persist. Secrets whisper from the stones. Let your breathing slow even more. Feel the weight of your body sinking into your bed, into the mattress, into the earth itself. You are safe, you are warm, and you are about to journey deeper into the mystery. Consider the logistics of pyramid construction and let the numbers wash over you like a gentle wave. If the Great Pyramid took 20 years to build and it contains 2.3 million blocks, that means the builders had to place an average of 315 blocks every single day. That's one block every 4.5 minutes around the clock for 2 decades straight. And these aren't small blocks. The average block weighs as much as a modern automobile. Some researchers have calculated that to achieve this rate of construction, the builders would have needed to move and place a block every 2 minutes during the daylight hours. Every 2 minutes for 20 years. Now, I'm not going to tell you that this was impossible. Human beings have accomplished extraordinary things throughout history, often with tools and techniques that we underestimate. The ancient Egyptians were brilliant engineers, skilled administrators, and possessed knowledge accumulated over centuries of construction experience. Before the Great Pyramid, there were earlier pyramids, earlier temples, earlier monuments. Each generation learned from the one before, refining techniques, improving methods, passing down knowledge. But I am going to tell you that there is more to this story than simply moving stone blocks, much more. Let us talk about the internal structure of the Great Pyramid, for this is where the mysteries truly begin to multiply. When you stand outside the pyramid, you see only a mountain of stone, but inside, there are passages, chambers, shafts, and spaces that seem to serve no obvious purpose. The arrangement of these internal features suggests a complexity of design, a sophistication of planning that goes far beyond simply creating a tomb for a dead king. The pyramid contains 3 known chambers. The first is the subterranean chamber, carved deep into the bedrock beneath the pyramid itself. This chamber is accessed by a long descending passage that plunges into the earth at a precise angle of 26 degrees, 31 minutes, and 23 seconds. The subterranean chamber is rough and unfinished, as if the workers simply stopped carving one day and never returned. For centuries, it was believed that this was intended to be Khufu's burial chamber, but that plans changed during construction. Perhaps Khufu wanted to be buried higher in the pyramid. Perhaps there was a flaw in the rock. Perhaps something else entirely. The second chamber is the Queen's Chamber, located in the heart of the pyramid itself. Despite its name, there is no evidence that any queen was ever buried here. The name was given by Arab explorers centuries after the pyramid was sealed, based on the Islamic practice of burying women in tombs with gabled roofs, which this chamber has. The Queen's Chamber contains a mysterious feature, a niche carved into the eastern wall, 5 corbelled layers deep, the purpose of which remains completely unknown. Some have suggested it held a statue. Others believe it contains something far more significant, something that was removed long ago. And then there is the King's Chamber. This is the room that everyone speaks of, the room that has inspired more theories, more speculation, and more wonder than perhaps any other space on Earth. The King's Chamber is located near the center of the pyramid, accessed by a corridor so magnificent that it has its own name, the Grand Gallery. This passage rises at a steep angle, its walls corbelled inward in 7 steps, creating a space that is 28 feet high and 153 feet long. The precision of the stonework in the Grand Gallery is extraordinary. The blocks fit together so tightly that you cannot insert a piece of paper between them. And the walls are not simply stacked, they are carved with mysterious niches, holes, and grooves, whose purpose remains debated to this day. At the top of the Grand Gallery, after crawling through a low passage, you enter the King's Chamber. The room is constructed entirely of red granite, quarried at Aswan, nearly 500 miles to the south. The blocks of granite weigh between 25 and 80 tons each, and they were somehow transported up the Nile, across the desert, up the rising pyramid, and fitted into place with absolute precision. The King's Chamber measures exactly 20 royal cubits by 10 royal cubits by 1118 royal cubits. Why those specific dimensions? Researchers have noted that this creates a room whose proportions embody the golden ratio, the mathematical constant that appears throughout nature, in seashells, in flower petals, in the spiral of galaxies. Was this intentional? Did the ancient Egyptians understand the golden ratio 5,000 years ago? Or is this merely a coincidence? Inside the king's chamber, there is only one object, a granite sarcophagus. It sits near the western wall, aligned precisely with the north-south axis of the pyramid. The sarcophagus is carved from a single block of granite, and it bears no inscriptions, no decorations, no hieroglyphics whatsoever. When the pyramid was first entered by modern explorers, the sarcophagus was empty. No mummy was found, no treasure, no grave goods of any kind. Where is the body of Khufu? Was it removed by tomb robbers? Was it moved to a different location? Or was it ever there at all? Some researchers have suggested that the Great Pyramid was never intended to be a tomb, that it served some other purpose entirely, something we have not yet understood. Now, let us explore one of the most intriguing features of the king's chamber, the so-called air shafts. From the north and south walls of the king's chamber, two narrow shafts extend outward and upward, eventually reaching the exterior of the pyramid. For a long time, these were believed to be ventilation shafts, designed to provide fresh air for the workers during construction or for the deceased pharaoh in the afterlife. But closer investigation revealed something remarkable. The northern shaft points directly toward the circumpolar stars, the stars that never set below the horizon, which the ancient Egyptians associated with immortality. The southern shaft points toward the constellation Orion, specifically toward the star Alnitak, the lowest star in Orion's belt. And here's where it gets truly fascinating. The Egyptians associated Orion with Osiris, the god of the dead, the lord of the underworld, the deity who granted eternal life to the worthy. Similar shafts extend from the queen's chamber, but these do not reach the exterior of the pyramid. They stop abruptly after a short distance, blocked by small stone doors equipped with copper handles. What lies beyond these doors? In 2002, a robotic explorer drilled through one of the doors and found another door. And beyond that, we still don't know for certain. The alignment of these shafts with specific stars at specific times in history has led some researchers to propose what is known as the Orion correlation theory. According to this theory, the three pyramids of Giza, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the slightly smaller Pyramid of Khafre, and the smallest Pyramid of Menkaure are arranged to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt. The relative sizes and positions of the pyramids match the relative brightness and positions of the stars, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. If this is true, it suggests that the entire Giza complex was designed as a reflection of the heavens on earth, as above, so below. The ancient Egyptians may have been attempting to create a cosmic map, a terrestrial mirror of the celestial realm, perhaps as a way to guide the pharaoh's soul to the stars. Take a deep breath in. Hold it, release slowly. Feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation, deeper into the mystery. But the Orion correlation theory goes even further. Some researchers have noted that the shafts of the Great Pyramid would have aligned perfectly with their target stars not during the reign of Khufu in 2500 BC. This is the era that some alternative historians call Zep Tepi, the first time, the Golden Age, when the gods ruled on earth before the time of the pharaohs. Now mainstream Egyptology firmly places the construction of the pyramids in the Old Kingdom. Around the evidence for this dating includes inscriptions, pottery styles, tool marks, the aforementioned pyri, and radiocarbon dating of organic material found within the pyramids. But the question of the alignment remains. Why would the builders align their shafts to stellar positions that wouldn't be accurate for another 8,000 years in the past? One possible explanation is precession. Due to the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, the positions of the stars appear to change over time in a cycle that takes approximately 26,000 years to complete. The ancient Egyptians were keen astronomers, and there is evidence that they were aware of precession. Perhaps they designed the pyramid shafts to mark not only the stars of their own time, but also to encode knowledge of the astronomical past or future. Or perhaps there is something we don't yet understand about the true age of these monuments. Let us set aside controversy for a moment and return to the human story, because behind every stone, every measurement, every astronomical alignment, there were people, real men and women, who lived and worked and dreamed under the same sun and stars that we see today, who built the pyramids. For centuries, the popular imagination has portrayed the pyramid builders as slaves, perhaps the Hebrew slaves mentioned in the Bible, whipped and beaten by cruel overseers as they dragged massive stones across the burning sand. But modern archaeology has revealed a different picture, one that is in many ways more remarkable than the myth. The pyramid builders were not slaves. They were a workforce of skilled laborers, craftsmen, and organized teams who took pride in their work and were rewarded for their effort. We know this because archaeologists have discovered the city where these workers lived, located just south of the Sphinx in a place now called the Workers' Village. The Workers' Village was a planned community, laid out in streets and organized by function. There were barracks for temporary workers, houses for permanent skilled craftsmen, bakeries that produced bread for the workforce, breweries that made beer, because ancient Egyptians loved their beer, and even a facility that appears to have been a hospital or medical treatment center. The bones of workers found in the cemetery near the village show evidence of healed fractures, amputations performed to save lives, and signs of arthritis and wear consistent with heavy labor, but also with long lives. These were not the bones of slaves worked to death. These were the bones of respected workers who were cared for in life and honored in death. The organization of the workforce was remarkable. Workers were divided into crews, and crews were divided into gangs, and each gang had a name. Ancient graffiti found on pyramid blocks reveals these names: the Friends of Khufu, the Drunkards of Menkaure, the Enduring Ones, the Powerful Ones. These names suggest camaraderie, team spirit, perhaps even friendly competition between groups. The workers appear to have rotated in and out of pyramid construction duty. Farmers from across Egypt would spend part of each year working on the royal projects, particularly during the inundation season, when the Nile flooded its banks and farming was impossible. This was not forced labor, but rather a form of tax, a way of contributing to the greater glory of Egypt and its divine king. For the workers, participating in the construction of a pyramid was not a punishment, but an honor. They were building the eternal home of a god. Close your eyes and imagine yourself among them. You are a young worker, perhaps in your 20s, strong and healthy, recruited from a farming village upstream on the Nile. You have never seen anything like the Giza Plateau. The scale of the construction site is overwhelming. Everywhere you look, there is activity. Teams of men dragging stones on wooden sledges, water carriers pouring water on the sand to reduce friction, surveyors with measuring rods and plumb bobs checking angles, scribes with papyrus scrolls recording everything. You are assigned to a gang called the Vigor of Khufu, a name that fills you with pride. Your gang leader is a man named Khufu Hotep, a veteran of many construction seasons, his hands calloused, his skin dark from years under the sun. He teaches you the rhythms of the work, when to pull, when to rest, how to coordinate with the men in front of you and behind you so that the sledge moves smoothly across the prepared surface. The days are long, but the food is good. Bread and beer for breakfast, a midday meal of vegetables and sometimes fish or meat, more bread and beer in the evening. The scribes keep careful track of how much food each gang receives, ensuring that no one goes hungry. There is a spirit of unity on the plateau, a sense that you are all part of something greater than yourselves. And at night, when the work is done and the sun has set behind the western cliffs, you gather with your gang around a small fire. Someone plays a flute, someone else tells a story, a tale of the gods, perhaps, or a joke about a rival gang. You look up at the stars and you wonder, what will it be like when the pyramid is finished? Will you be alive to see the capstone placed at the apex, gleaming gold against the blue sky? Will your children's children stand in the shadow of this mountain and know that you helped build it? You fall asleep on the sand, tired but content, and in your dreams you see the completed pyramid, shining like a beacon of light, pointing toward the heavens like a finger reaching for the stars. This was the reality of pyramid construction, not the whips and chains of popular imagination, but a vast, coordinated, carefully managed project that represented the combined efforts of an entire civilization. Let your breathing slow, let your muscles relax, let the ancient peace of the desert wash over you. But even with a well-organized workforce, questions remain about the engineering challenges involved. Consider the problem of transportation. The pyramid is built primarily from limestone, quarried from nearby sites on the Giza plateau itself. But the finest casing stones, the white Tura limestone that gave the pyramid its brilliant sheen, had to be transported from quarries across the Nile, and the granite used in the king's chamber came from Aswan, nearly 500 miles to the south. How do you move an 80-ton block of granite 500 miles? The answer, we believe, is boats. The ancient Egyptians were master boat builders, and the Nile was their highway. During the inundation season, when the river was at its highest, boats could navigate closer to the construction site. Archaeological evidence suggests that canals and harbors were constructed specifically to facilitate the transport of construction materials, but getting the stones from the boats to the pyramid site was another challenge entirely. And here we encounter one of the enduring mysteries, the ramp. The most commonly accepted theory is that the Egyptians used ramps to raise the stone blocks to their positions on the growing pyramid. But what kind of ramps? How were they constructed? And where did they go? Several theories have been proposed. Some suggest a long, straight ramp that rose from the plateau to the working level of the pyramid, but calculations show that such a ramp would have had to be over a mile long to maintain a reasonable slope, requiring almost as much material as the pyramid itself. Others have proposed a spiral ramp that wound around the outside of the pyramid as it rose. This would be more efficient in terms of material, but it would make it difficult to check the accuracy of the pyramid's angles as construction progressed. In 2007, a French architect named Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed a fascinating alternative, an internal ramp. According to this theory, the Egyptians built a ramp inside the pyramid itself, spiraling upward through the structure as it was built. This internal ramp would be invisible from the outside, would not require additional material, and would explain certain anomalies in the pyramid structure that have been detected using modern imaging techniques. Houdin's theory remains controversial, but in 2016, scientists using thermal imaging discovered unexpected variations in the temperature of the pyramid stones, suggesting the presence of voids or passages within the structure that have never been explored. Could these be the remnants of an internal ramp? Could there be chambers and passages within the Great Pyramid that have remained hidden for 5,000 years? In 2017,
The Scan Pyramids project announced the discovery of a massive void within the Great Pyramid, located above the Grand Gallery. This void is at least 100 feet long, and its purpose is completely unknown. It was detected using muon tomography, a technique that uses cosmic ray particles to image the interior of dense structures. As of now, no physical access has been made to this void. We don't know if it's a chamber, a construction gap, or something else entirely. What secrets might it hold? What treasures, what inscriptions, what knowledge might be waiting in the darkness, preserved in stone for 5 millennia? Let yourself drift deeper into relaxation. The mysteries of the pyramid are vast, but you don't need to solve them tonight. Tonight, you only need to listen, to wonder, and to rest. Let us speak now of the Sphinx, that enigmatic guardian that crouches before the pyramids like a lion guarding its pride. The Great Sphinx of Giza is one of the largest and oldest statues in the world. It measures 240 feet long and 66 feet high, carved from a single ridge of limestone bedrock. Its body is that of a lion, symbol of power and royalty, while its face is human, traditionally believed to represent the pharaoh Khafre, builder of the second largest pyramid at Giza. But there are mysteries here too. The face of the Sphinx is smaller than would be expected for a statue of its size, as if it were recarved from a larger head, perhaps originally depicting a lion or some other creature. Some researchers have suggested that the Sphinx is much older than the pyramids, dating perhaps to the same mysterious era of Zep Tepi, suggested by the stellar alignments. They point to evidence of water erosion on the body of the Sphinx, erosion patterns that they claim could only have been caused by prolonged rainfall that hasn't occurred in the Sahara for at least 7,000 years. This theory, championed by geologist Robert Schuch and author John Anthony West, remains controversial. Mainstream Egyptologists maintain that the Sphinx was carved during the reign of Khafre, around 200 and 500 BCE, and that the erosion patterns can be explained by other factors including chemical weathering and ancient repairs, but the debate continued. And the Sphinx keeps its secrets, staring eternally toward the eastern horizon, waiting for the sun to rise. Between the paws of the Sphinx lies a small temple, and nearby are the remains of 2 larger temples, the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple. These temples were constructed from massive limestone blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons, cut with a precision that rivals the pyramids themselves. How were such massive stones moved and placed? The same questions that haunt the pyramids haunt their companion. And what lies beneath the Sphinx? Seismic surveys have detected anomalies beneath the statue, including what appears to be a rectangular chamber beneath the front paw. Edgar Cayce, the famous American psychic known as the Sleeping Prophet, predicted in the 1930s that a hall of records would be found beneath the Sphinx, containing knowledge from a lost civilization that predates ancient Egypt. While no such chamber has been excavated, the anomalies detected by seismic surveys remain unexplained. Now let us consider some of the more unusual theories about the pyramid. I share these not to convince you of their truth, but simply to explore the full range of human wonder and imagination that these monuments have inspired. Some researchers have noted that the Great Pyramid sits almost exactly at the center of Earth's landmass.
If you draw lines of latitude and longitude through the pyramid, they pass through more land and less water than any other lines you could draw. Coincidence? Or evidence of sophisticated geographical knowledge? Others have pointed out that the dimensions of the pyramid encode mathematical constants. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is 2p, the same constant that defines the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. The ratio of the pyramid's height to its base length is 0.636, which is the tangent of 32.4 degrees, the angle of the pyramid's slope. When you multiply the height by 43 to 200,
you get the polar radius of the Earth. When you multiply the perimeter by 43 at the rate at 200, you get the circumference of the Earth at the equator. The number 43 at 200 is significant because it is exactly twice the rate of precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis. Are these encodings intentional? Did the ancient Egyptians possess knowledge of the Earth's dimensions that we assume was only discovered in modern times? Or are we seeing patterns that aren't really there, finding meaning in coincidence? The human mind is remarkable in its ability to find patterns. Sometimes those patterns are real, sometimes they are illusions, and sometimes the truth is more complex than we can imagine. Let us also consider the purpose of the pyramid. The conventional explanation is that they were tombs designed to preserve the body and soul of the pharaoh for eternity, but other theories have been proposed. Some researchers have suggested that the pyramids were power plants designed to generate energy through some unknown process. They point to the precision of the construction, the careful alignment of internal chambers and shafts, and the use of specific materials that might have electromagnetic properties. Could the pyramids have been machines of some kind, whose function we no longer understand? Others have proposed that the pyramids were astronomical observatories designed to track the movements of the stars and predict celestial events. The precision of their alignment with the cardinal directions, the stellar orientations of the air shafts, and the possible correlation with Orion's belt all support this interpretation. Still others have suggested that the pyramids served a spiritual or initiatory function, that they were temples where priests or pharaohs underwent transformative experiences, perhaps involving meditation, sensory deprivation, or other techniques designed to induce altered states of consciousness. The king's chamber, with its acoustic properties and its granite sarcophagus, might have been a place where initiates lay in darkness, entering visionary states and returning with spiritual knowledge. We don't know for certain. We may never know for certain, and perhaps that is part of the pyramids' enduring power. They invite us to wonder, to question, to imagine possibilities beyond the limits of our current understanding. Let your mind float freely now. Don't try to solve the mystery. Just let them wash over you like gentle waves on a quiet shore.
I want to tell you some stories now. Stories that have been passed down through the ages. Stories about the pyramids and the people who built them. Stories that may or may not be true, but that carry their own kind of wisdom. There is a story about the pharaoh Khufu and the magician Dedi. It is recorded in an ancient text called the Westcar Papyrus, which dates to the Middle Kingdom, about 1,000 years after Khufu's reign. According to the story, Khufu was fascinated by magic and the secrets of the gods. He heard tell of a magician named Dedi, who lived in a village downstream on the Nile, a man who was said to be 110 years old, who ate 500 loaves of bread and half an ox for his daily meal, and who possessed knowledge of the secret chambers of the sanctuary of Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. Khufu sent his son, Prince Hordev, to bring Dedi to the palace. When Dedi arrived, Khufu asked him to perform his famous feat of magic, reattaching the severed head of a creature to its body and restoring it to life. Dedi refused to do this with a human prisoner, as Khufu suggested, but agreed to perform the trick with a goose, a duck, and an ox. In each case, he cut off the animal's head, and in each case, he restored the animal to life. Then Khufu asked about the secret chambers of Thoth. Dedi said that he himself did not know where they were, but he knew that the number of the secret chambers was hidden in a flint chest in a room called the Inventory in Heliopolis. However, he said he could not bring Khufu this chest dead, The oldest of 3 children, who would be born to a woman named Rigeti, would bring it to him. Who was Rigeti? That according to the story, she was pregnant by the god Ra himself, and her 3 children would go on to found the 5th dynasty of Egypt, replacing Khufu's line on the throne. What was in the flint chest? What were the secret chambers of Thoth? The story never tells us, but it hints at hidden knowledge, at secret places, at mysteries that even the mighty Khufu could not access. This story is probably fiction, written for entertainment and political purposes during the Middle Kingdom, but it shows that even in ancient times, the pyramids were surrounded by mystery and legend. The ancient Egyptians themselves may not have fully understood the monuments their ancestors had built. Here is another story, this one from the Arab historians who wrote about Egypt after the Muslim conquest in the 7th. According to these accounts, the pyramids were built by a king named Sarid, who lived before the Great Flood. Sarid had a vision that warned him of a coming catastrophe, a deluge of water and fire that would destroy civilization. To preserve the knowledge of his people, Sarid ordered the construction of the pyramids. Inside them, he placed the wisdom of the ages, books of science, scrolls of magic, maps of the stars, and treasures beyond imagining. When the flood came, the pyramids survived, standing as silent sentinels above the waters. When the flood receded, the knowledge within the pyramids was there for a future civilization to discover. This story has no historical basis that we know of, but it captures something essential about how humans have always perceived the pyramids as repositories of knowledge, as links to a distant and perhaps superior past, as messages from the ancients to it. And there is another story, one that comes not from ancient texts, but from modern experience. It is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1798, Napoleon led a military expedition to Egypt, conquering the country and beginning the process of modern Egyptology. Napoleon brought with him not only soldiers but scholars, artists, and scientists, charged with studying and documenting the wonders of ancient Egypt. It was this expedition that led to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, the key to deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphics. During his time in Egypt, Napoleon visited the pyramids, and according to some accounts, he asked to be left alone inside the king's chamber. He stayed there for a considerable time, and when he emerged, he was visibly shaken, pale, and disturbed. When asked what had happened, Napoleon reportedly refused to speak of it. Later in life, when asked again, he supposedly said, "You would not believe me if I told you." He died without ever revealing what he experienced inside the pyramid. Is this story true? We cannot know for certain. Napoleon left no written record of this experience, and the accounts come from secondary sources, but the story has persisted for over 200 years, adding to the aura of mystery that surrounds the king's chamber. What might happen if you were sealed alone inside that granite room, in total darkness, surrounded by millions of tons of ancient stone? What might you feel? What might you hear? What might you see? Some modern visitors have reported unusual experiences in the king's chamber. Feelings of profound peace or of intense unease, sounds that seem to come from nowhere, visions and insights that emerge unending from the darkness. The chamber has acoustic properties that amplify certain frequencies and create resonance. Some researchers have suggested that these acoustic effects were intentional, designed to enhance meditative or ritualistic experiences. You don't need to visit Egypt to touch the mystery. You can feel it now, here, wherever you are, as you drift towards sleep. The pyramids are not just monuments of stone, they are monuments of consciousness, of the human drive to reach beyond the ordinary, to touch the eternal, to leave a mark on time that will never be erased. Take another deep breath,
Let it out slowly. Feel yourself sinking deeper into the night. Now, I want to share with you some of the numbers and measurements that make the Great Pyramid so extraordinary. Let these facts wash over you without trying to remember them. They are threads in a tapestry of wonder. The base of the Great Pyramid is a nearly perfect square. Each side is 756 feet long, with a variation of only 8 inches across the entire perimeter. The 4 corners are almost perfectly right angles, with a variation of only 12 arcseconds. That's 1 of 300th of a degree. The pyramid is oriented to true north, with an accuracy of 3 of 60th of a degree. This is more precise than the Royal Greenwich Observatory in London, which has an error of 9. How did the ancient Egyptians achieve such precision without the magnetic compass, which wasn't invented for another 300-500 years? Some researchers have suggested that the Egyptians used the star. By observing the rising and setting of circumpolar stars, they could establish a true north line with remarkable accuracy. Others have proposed more complex methods involving shadows, reflections in still water, or sophisticated surveying techniques that have been lost to time. The angle of the pyramid's slope is 51 degrees and 51 minutes. This specific angle creates a pyramid whose perimeter divided by its height equals 2. Whether this was intentional or an accidental result of the construction method, it links the pyramid to the fundamental geometry of the circle. The pyramid's apex, before it was damaged by time and human activity, stood at exactly 40 Lake. You went exactly 200 feet above sea level. So the apex of the pyramid was about 680 feet above the Mediterranean Sea. From the top of the pyramid, on a clear day, you could see the Nile winding through the desert, the green ribbon of life in a sea of sand. The descending passage that leads to the subterranean chamber points directly toward Alpha Draconis, the star that was the North Star. And as the Earth's axis wobbles through the precession cycle, different stars take turns being the North Star. Today it's Polaris. In the time of the pyramid builders, it was Thuban, also known as Alpha Draconis. The passage is aligned so precisely that the star would have been visible from the bottom of the passage on certain nights, a pinpoint of light in the darkness. The Grand Gallery is 15.3 feet long, 28 feet high at its center, and 6 feet 9 inches wide at the base, narrowing to 3 feet 5 inches at the ceiling. The walls are corbelled, each layer of stone projecting inward above the one below, creating a sense of vast, shadowy height. Walking up the Grand Gallery is like ascending into a cathedral of stone, a sacred space that leads to the heart of the mystery. The King's Chamber is 34 feet 4 inches long, 17 feet 2 inches wide, and 19 feet. These dimensions are precisely 20 cubits by 10 cubits by 1118 cubits, using the royal cubit of 20.62 inches. The proportions create a room whose dimensions embody several important ratios, including 2:1, which relates to the golden ratio. The granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber is too large to fit through the passage leading to the chamber. This means it must have been placed before the chamber was sealed. It was carved from a single block of Aswan granite, and its outer surfaces are flat to within. The inner surfaces are equally precise, but there are no inscriptions, no decorations, nothing to identify who was meant to lie within. The 5 relieving chambers above the King's Chamber were designed to distribute the immense weight of the stone above and prevent the chamber from collapsing. The topmost of these chambers has a gabled roof, each stone in the roof weighing many tons. It was in these relieving chambers that the only inscriptions in the entire pyramid were found. Graffiti left by the work crews, including the only surviving mention of Khufu's name in the pyramid. These inscriptions are simple. The gang, the drunkards of Menkoer. Wait, Menkoer. Wasn't this Khufu's pyramid? This anomaly has led some to question the dating of the pyramid. while others explain it as a reference to a later work crew involved in maintenance or modification. Let the numbers fade now. They are not important to remember. What is important is the sense of wonder they evoke, the recognition that something extraordinary was achieved here, something that still challenges our understanding. I want to speak now about sound. In recent decades, researchers have begun to study the acoustic properties of the pyramids. What they have found is remarkable. The king's chamber resonates at specific frequencies, amplifying some sounds and dampening others. When you stand in the chamber and hum or chant, you can feel the entire room vibrating around you. Certain frequencies seem to activate the stone itself, as if the chamber were a giant musical instrument designed to be played by the human voice. Studies have shown that the king's chamber resonates most strongly at 16 Hz, a frequency at the low end of human hearing. Sounds at this frequency are felt more than heard. They create a vibration in the body, a sense of presence, a feeling of energy moving through you. Some researchers have suggested that prolonged exposure to these frequencies could induce altered states of consciousness. The sarcophagus has its own resonant frequency, different from the chamber. When you tap on it, it produces a tone that seems to hang in the air, reverberating through the stone walls. Some claim that the sarcophagus was designed to be a resonating chamber, that a person lying inside would be immersed in specific frequencies designed to produce particular effects on the body and mind. Or the ancient Egyptians using sound as a form of technology. Did they understand frequencies and vibrations in ways that we are only now beginning to recover? In a temple at Dendera, far to the south of Giza, there are carvings that some researchers interpret as depicting large acoustic devices, perhaps horns or bells or some other instruments designed to produce specific sound. In the temple at Karnak, there is a small room called the Sanctum Sanctorum, the holiest place in the temple, where the acoustics are so perfect that a whisper in one corner can be heard clearly in the opposite corner, as if the walls themselves are speaking. Sound was sacred to the ancient Egyptians. They believed that the world was created by sound, by the words of the Creator God, speaking existence into being. The hieroglyphic writing system was believed to have magical power because it represented sound, and to speak a thing was to create it, to give it life. Could the pyramids be devices for creating, amplifying, or directing sound? Could they be instruments in a symphony we no longer know how to play? Rest now. Let these ideas float like leaves on a still pond. You don't need to hold on to them. They will return when you are ready. Let me tell you about the capstone, the pyramidion, the small pyramid-shaped stone that once sat at the apex of the Great Pyramid. No pyramidion has ever been found for the Great Pyramid of Khufu. We don't know what it looked like, what it was made of, or what might have happened to it. Some accounts suggest it was made of gold, or electrum, or some other precious material that caught the first and last light of the sun. Some suggest it was inscribed with sacred texts or symbols. Some suggest it was the key to the pyramid's true purpose, the final piece of a puzzle whose solution has been lost. On other pyramids and obelisks throughout Egypt, pyramidions have been found. They are often made of black granite, sometimes gilded, sometimes inscribed. The pyramidion of the Pyramid of Amenemhat III, for example, bears an image of the winged sun disk and a prayer to the sun god.
But the pyramidion of the Great Pyramid, if it ever existed, has vanished into the mists of time. What secrets might it have revealed? What final message might it have carried? Some have suggested that the Great Pyramid was never finished, that for some reason the death of Khufu, a change in plans, some unknown disaster, construction was halted before the capstone could be placed. The flat top of the pyramid that we see today, where tourists climb to take photographs and lovers carve their initials, might be the result of an incomplete construction rather than erosion or theft. But others believe the Pyramidion was real, that it shone like a beacon for centuries before it was removed, perhaps by thieves, perhaps by later pharaohs who repurposed it, perhaps by conquerors who melted it down. The gold of the ages reduced to anonymous coins or jewelry, its sacred purpose forgotten. Feel yourself floating now, between wakefulness and sleep, between the modern world and the ancient one, between questions and answers, between the known and the unknown. Let us return to the question of hidden chambers. We have already mentioned the large void discovered in 2017 above the Grand Gallery, but there may be more, much more. The Great Pyramid has been explored for centuries, but many parts of it remain inaccessible. The bedrock beneath the pyramid has never been fully surveyed. The spaces behind the walls have never been fully explored. Even with modern technology, Mu-1 tomography, ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, we can only see so much. In the 1990s, a French team claimed to have detected a hidden corridor behind the stones of the Queen's chamber using ground-penetrating radar. The Egyptian authorities were skeptical, and the exploration was not pursued. Is there a corridor there? A chamber? Nothing at all. In the 2000s, a Japanese team reported anomalies beneath the Sphinx that suggested the presence of underground chambers. Again, the claims were controversial, and no excavation was permitted. What lies beneath the paws of the enigmatic guardian? Some believe that the real treasures of the pyramids are not gold or jewels, but knowledge, hidden libraries perhaps, containing the wisdom of the ages. Maps of the stars, histories of lost civilizations, blueprints for technologies we have not yet imagined. The Hall of Records prophesied by Edgar Cayce, waiting in the darkness for the right person to discover it at the right time. These claims are speculative, of course. There is no proven evidence for hidden chambers filled with ancient knowledge, but the possibility remains, tantalizing and remote, like a star just below the horizon. And there is always this thought: if the ancient Egyptians could build the pyramids themselves, accomplishments that we struggle to replicate today, what else might they have been capable of? What knowledge did they possess that we have lost? What questions did they answer that we are still asking? Let that thought carry you now, gently, like a boat on the Nile, drifting with the current toward the sea. Now I want to tell you about the pharaohs themselves, the god-kings of ancient Egypt, who ruled for 3,000 years, whose monuments still dominate the landscape, whose faces still gaze at us from statues and paintings and masks of gold. The title pharaoh comes from the Egyptian phrase Pura, which means great house. Originally, it referred to the royal palace, but over time it came to refer to the king himself. The pharaoh was not merely a political leader, he was a god on earth, the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon-headed deity, who was the protector of Egypt and the son of Osiris and Isis. When a pharaoh died, he became Osiris, ruler of the underworld, judge of the dead, and his son became the new Horus, the new living god, the new pharaoh. This cycle of death and rebirth, of father becoming Osiris and son becoming Horus, was the central mythology of ancient Egypt, repeated for millennia, providing stability and continuity to one of the longest-lasting civilizations in human history. Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid, is a somewhat shadowy figure. We know surprisingly little about him, despite the grandeur of his monument. Only one confirmed image of him survives, A tiny ivory statuette, less than 3 inches tall, discovered in the Temple of Abi. It shows a man with a stern expression, seated on a throne, wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. That's all we have, a tiny figure for a man who built the largest monument the world had ever seen. Ancient Greek historians painted Khufu as a tyrant, a cruel king who enslaved his people to build his ego. Herodotus, the Greek historian who visited Egypt around 450 BCE, recorded stories that Khufu closed all the temples, banned sacrifices, and forced everyone to work on his pyramid. He even claimed that Khufu prostituted his own daughter to raise funds for construction. But these stories were written 2,000 years after Khufu's death, based on tales told by Egyptian guides who may have been more interested in entertaining tourists than preserving accurate history. Modern archaeology, as we discussed, suggests a different picture, a well-organized project staffed by willing workers, not a monument to tyranny. Still, the fact remains, Khufu built a structure so vast, so precise, so enduring, that 5,000 years later, we are still talking about it. Whatever his motivations, whatever his methods, he achieved immortality. Khufu's son, or possibly grandson, built the second pyramid at Giza, along with the Great Sphinx. His pyramid is slightly smaller than his father's, but sits on higher ground, so it appears to be the same. Some have seen this as a clever compromise, honoring the father while still expressing the son's own greatness. Menkaure, the third pharaoh of the Giza complex, built the smallest of the 3 pyramids, but smallness is relative. His pyramid is still 21 to 15 feet tall, a massive monument by any standard. It was originally encased in red granite rather than white limestone, giving it a distinctive appearance. Inside, Menkaure's sarcophagus was carved with intricate designs, unlike the plain box in his grandfather's pyramid. Why were these 3 pharaohs, grandfather, father, and grandson, or perhaps great uncle and nephew, the exact family relationships are debated, compelled to build at Giza? Why this plateau, at this time, in this configuration? Were they trying to create a celestial map, a mirror of Orion's belt on Earth? Were they following a grand plan that had been laid down by even earlier architects? Or were they simply competing with each other, each trying to outdo the last? We don't know. The pharaohs left no explanations, no builders' journals, no diaries expressing their intentions. They built for eternity, and they succeeded, but they left the reasons to our imagination. Let the pharaohs recede into the mist now. Their time was long ago, but their legacy remains. I want to speak about the workers again, not the logistics of their labor, but their lives, their beliefs, their hopes and fears. To work on a pyramid was to participate in a sacred act. The pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a machine for resurrection, a vehicle for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars and join the gods. By contributing to this sacred work, the workers were assuring their own connection to divinity, their own place in the cosmic order. They left behind evidence of their beliefs, graffiti, carved or painted on the stones, records the names of their gangs and their pride in their work. Small figurines, discovered in the workers' tombs, depict the activities of daily life that the deceased hoped to continue in the afterlife: baking bread, brewing beer, plowing fields, making love. They believed in an afterlife, these workers. They believed that if they lived good lives, if they spoke the truth, if they honored the gods, they would be judged worthy by Osiris and granted eternal life in the field of reeds, a paradise where everything was perfect, where the crops never failed,
where there was no sickness or sorrow. The Book of the Dead, the famous collection of spells and prayers designed to guide the deceased through the underworld, was not yet written in the time of the pyramid builders. That text would come later, during the New King, but the beliefs it expressed were ancient, perhaps stretching back even further than the pyramids themselves. The workers who built the pyramids are anonymous to us. We know some of their gang names, some of their job titles, some of the food they ate, and the injuries they suffered, but we don't know their individual names, their faces, their stories. They are lost in the great river of time, and yet their work endures. Every block they placed, every angle they measured, every ton they hauled up the growing pyramid, it is still there, still standing, still inspiring wonder. 5,000 years later, they achieved something that most of us can only dream of. They left a mark on the world that will never be erased. You are connected to them. Across the millennia, across the differences of culture and language and belief, you are connected. You are human, as they were. You have hands and a heart and a mind and a spirit, as they did. You struggle and dream and hope and fear, as they did. And when you close your eyes and imagine the Great Pyramid rising from the desert, you are touching something eternal, something that links all of humanity across all of time. Breathe deeply, feel that connection. Let it comfort you as you drift towards sleep.
Now let us explore one of the most controversial questions about the pyramids, their age. Mainstream Egyptology places the construction of the Great Pyramid around 250-60 BCE. The evidence for this dating includes inscriptions in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber that mention Khufu's name. These inscriptions were discovered by explorer Howard Vyse. Some skeptics have questioned their authenticity, suggesting that Vyse may have forged them to bolster his claims, but most Egyptologists accept them as genuine. The style of the pyramid fits with the evolution of pyramid building in Egypt. Before Khufu, there were earlier pyramids: the Step Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, the Bent Pyramid, and Red Pyramid of Sneferu at Dashur. Each of these represents a step in the development of pyramid technology, leading up to the perfection of the Great Pyramid. Pottery, tools, and other artifacts found at the Giza site are consistent with Old Kingdom styles. Radiocarbon dating of organic material, mortar, wood, etc., found in the pyramid gives dates consistent with the Old Kingdom. The Diary of Mira, discovered in 2013, describes the transportation of limestone blocks during the reign of Khufu, providing direct documentary evidence of Old Kingdom construction. This is a strong body of evidence, and most scholars accept the conventional dating, but alternative researchers have proposed that the pyramids, or at least some aspects of them, are much older. The water erosion on the Sphinx, as we mentioned, suggests to some researchers that the monument was carved during a period of heavy rainfall, which last occurred in Egypt around 7. If the Sphinx is that old, some argue perhaps the pyramids are too, or at least there was an earlier phase of construction that was later incorporated into the Old Kingdom monument. The stellar alignments of the air shafts, which some claim point to stars as they appeared around 10,500 BC, suggest to alternative researchers that the pyramids were designed with that earlier era in mind. Whether the shafts were actually built then, or simply designed to encode astronomical knowledge about that period, is a matter of debate. Legends and traditions from around the world speak of a great civilization that existed before recorded history, destroyed by a cataclysm, whose survivors scattered across the earth and planted the seeds of later culture. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote about Atlantis, a powerful island nation that sank beneath the sea around 9600 BC. These ideas are dismissed by mainstream archaeology,
which sees no evidence for advanced civilizations before the accepted historical record, but they persist in popular culture, inspiring books, documentaries, and endless speculation. I am not going to tell you what to believe. That is for you to decide based on your own study and your own judgment. I will only say that the pyramids are old, very old, and the further we look into the past, the more mysteries we encounter. Let the question of age fade now. Whether the pyramids are 4,500 years old or 12,000 years old, they are ancient beyond imagining. They have watched civilizations rise and fall. They have stood silent through wars and plagues, and revolutions. They have seen the stars wheel across the sky in their long, slow dance, and they will likely still be standing long after we are gone, testifying to the enduring power of human aspiration. Close your eyes. Let your body be heavy, your mind be still. Let me tell you about the Nile. The Nile River is the lifeblood of Egypt. It has been for as long as humans have lived there. Every year in ancient times, the Nile would flood its banks, depositing rich black soil across the floodplains, creating one of the most fertile agricultural regions in the world. This annual flood was the basis of Egyptian civilization. Without it, the desert would have swallowed everything.
The flooding of the Nile was so regular that the Egyptians based their calendar on it. They divided the year into 3 seasons: Akhet, the inundation, when the Nile flooded and farmers could not work the fields; Piret, the growing season, when crops were planted and cultivated; and Shemu, the harvest, when the crops were gathered and the land began to dry. During the inundation season, with the fields underwater and farming impossible, labor was available for other purposes. This was the time when workers were recruited for pyramid construction, their labor a form of tax owed to the pharaoh. The Nile was also a highway, the main road of transportation in a country where roads were difficult and the desert was hostile. Boats carried goods, people, and ideas from one end of Egypt to the other, and boats carried the massive stone blocks that would become the pyramids, floating downriver from the quarries of Tura and upriver from the granite quarries of Aswan. Imagine a boat carrying an 80-ton block of granite, creeping slowly northward against the current, propelled by oars and sails, guided by skilled pilots who knew every bend and sandbar in the river. Imagine the weeks it would take to make the journey from Aswan to Giza, the careful loading and unloading, the constant fear that the precious cargo would be lost to the river. When the block finally arrived at the construction site, it was unloaded onto a specially built quay and dragged on wooden sledges to the foot of the pyramid. From there, by methods we still debate, it was raised to its final position, hundreds of feet above the ground, and fitted into place with a precision that seems almost superhuman. This was done not once, but thousands of times. Granite, limestone, mortar, copper, tools, food, water, everything the construction site needed flowed along the Nile, the artery that fed the greatest construction project the world had ever seen. The Nile was sacred to the Egyptians. They worshipped it as a god, Hapi, depicted as a man with a large belly and pendulous breasts, representing the fertility and abundance that the river brought. They wrote poems to it, thanking it for its gifts. Hail to you, Hapi, who comes from the earth, who comes to give life to Egypt. The river gave life, and the river connected everything. From the Mediterranean in the north to the cataracts in the south, Egypt was one nation, united by the river that flowed through it. Feel the gentle current now, carrying you downstream, carrying you towards sleep. Let us speak of the sunset in the west and the land of the dead. The Egyptians observed that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. They interpreted this daily cycle as a metaphor for life and death. The east, where the sun was born each morning, was the land of the living. The west, where the sun died each evening, was the land of the dead. For this reason,
Egyptian cities and temples were generally built on the east bank of the Nile, while tombs and cemeteries were built on the west bank. The pyramids at Giza are on the west bank, facing the setting sun, facing the realm of Osiris, the land of eternity. Each evening, as the sun sank below the western horizon, the Egyptians believed that Ra, the sun god, was beginning his journey through the underworld. He would sail through 12 regions of darkness, each representing an hour of the night, facing challenges and dangers at every stage. At midnight, he would reach the deepest point of the underworld, where he would merge with Osiris, the Lord of the Dead, and at dawn he would be reborn, rising in the east as a new sun, triumphant over death. This daily cycle was a promise of resurrection, a reminder that death was not the end, but a transformation, a passage to a new form of existence. The pharaoh, upon death, would undertake the same journey as Ra, sailing through the underworld, facing the judgment of Osiris, and emerging as an immortal spirit, an Ak who would dwell among the stars forever. The pyramid was designed to facilitate this journey. It was oriented to the cardinal directions so that the pharaoh's spirit could navigate by the stars. The passages and chambers were aligned to celestial bodies that would guide the spirit on its way. The spells and prayers inscribed on the walls of later pyramids, the pyramid texts, provided the magic words that would open doors, defeat enemies, and ensure safe passage. When you look at a pyramid, you are not looking at a tomb, not really. You are looking at a launch pad, a spaceship, a vehicle designed to carry a soul from this world to the next. And perhaps, the pyramids are still doing their job. Perhaps the spirits of Khufu and Khafre and Menkaure are still out there among the stars, looking down on the monuments they built and watching as we puzzle over their secrets and waiting for us to understand. Let that thought carry you now, gently, into the night. I want to talk about this. The ancient Egyptians were passionate astronomers, and without telescopes, without satellites, without any of the technology we take for granted, and they mapped the heavens with remarkable accuracy. They identified constellations, tracked the movements of planets, and predict eclipses, and organized their calendar around celestial events. And the most important star in ancient Egyptian astronomy was Sirius, in which they called Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, and its annual rising just before dawn, after a period of invisibility, coincided almost exactly with the annual flooding of the Nile. This heliacal rising of Sirius marked the beginning of the Egyptian New Year and was celebrated as a major religious festival. The Egyptians associated Sirius with the goddess Isis and the wife of Osiris and mother of Horus. The rising of Sirius was seen as the return of Isis and bringing the life-giving waters of the flood and renewing the land, resurrecting the dying vegetation. Orion, which the Egyptians called Sahu, was associated with Osiris himself. The constellation rises in the east before dawn, just like the rising sun, and was seen as the celestial form of the god of the dead. The 3 stars of Orion's belt were of particular importance, and as we have discussed, and researchers believe, the 3 pyramids of Giza were designed to mirror them. The circumpolar stars, and the stars that never set below the horizon, were called the imperishable ones. They were associated with the eternal afterlife, the destination of the pharaoh's spirit. The northern sky was the realm of immortality, the place where the soul would dwell forever, never rising and never setting, always present in the night sky. The air shafts of the Great Pyramid point towards specific stars, Thuban and Draco, the North Star of that era, and Al-Nitak and Orion, the lowest star in the belt. These alignments were not accidental. They were deliberate, designed to connect the interior of the pyramid to the celestial realm. Imagine lying in the king's chamber, in the darkness, looking up through the southern air shaft at the night sky. Imagine seeing the star Al-Nitak, the celestial form of Osiris, shining at the end of the narrow passage. Imagine feeling your soul drawn upward, toward the light, toward the stars, toward eternity. This is what the pyramid was for. This is what it meant. A stairway to heaven, a ladder to the stars. Feel yourself rising now, light as a feather, drifting upward into the night sky, into the realm of the imperishable ones. There is a hymn in the pyramid texts, inscribed on the walls of later pyramids. It speaks to the ascending spirit of the pharaoh. The sky thunders, the earth shakes, because you are a spirit, you are a god. You climb to the sky among the stars, among the imperishable ones. You will never perish. You will never perish. Let that promise comfort you now, as you drift deeper into sleep. Now let me tell you about the desert. Egypt is a land of extremes. The narrow ribbon of green along the Nile gives way almost immediately to desert, vast, empty, endless desert. To the west lies the Libyan desert, part of the Sahara, the largest hot desert in the world. To the east lies the Arabian desert, stretching toward the Red Sea. The desert was the Red Land, the land of Set, the god of chaos and violence. It was dangerous, hostile, unpredictable, but it was also sacred in its own way, a place of testing, of transformation, of spiritual power. The pyramids were built at the edge of the desert, on the boundary between the fertile valley and the barren sand. This was a liminal space, a threshold between worlds, between life and death, between the everyday and the eternal. The desert preserved things, the dry air, the lack of water, the constant sun. These conditions naturally mummified organic material, preventing decay. Before the Egyptians learned the art of artificial mummification, they buried their dead in the desert, in simple pits, where the sand would naturally preserve the bodies. The discovery of these naturally preserved corpses may have inspired the belief that the body needed to be preserved for the afterlife. The desert also hid things. Temples were buried by sand. Tombs were lost. Entire cities vanished beneath the dune. The famous tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922, had been hidden and forgotten for over 3,000 years, protected by layers of sand and debris. What else might still be hidden out there, waiting to be found? The desert is patient. It covers and uncovers according to its own rhythm, revealing secrets when it chooses, hiding them when it chooses. The pyramids have spent millennia half buried, then cleared, then buried again. They have weathered sandstorms that stripped away their casing stone. They have endured the burning heat of summer and the cold of winter nights, and still they stand. Let the silence of the desert enfold you now. Let the stillness enter your mind. Let the peace of the endless sands carry you into dreamless sleep. I have been speaking for some time now, and you may be wondering when this journey will end. The truth is, the mysteries of the pyramids are endless. We could speak of them for 1,000 nights and still have more to explore, but tonight I want to focus on what the pyramids, not what they are, but what they represent, what message they carry across the millennia to us. I believe the pyramids are a message of hope. Think about what the ancient Egyptians faced. They lived in a world without antibiotics, without vaccines, without the technologies that protect us from so many dangers. Disease was mysterious and often fatal. Natural disasters struck without warning. enemies threatened from all sides. Life was fragile, precarious, uncertain, and yet they chose to build. They chose to create something so vast, so permanent, so beautiful, that it would outlast their own civilization, outlast all the civilizations that followed, and still be standing when visitors came from the other side of the world, speaking languages that had not yet been invented, using technologies that would have seemed like magic. They said, in stone, we were here, we existed, we dreamed, we built, we reached for the stars. This is a message that every generation needs to hear in times of darkness, in times of doubt, in times when the future seems uncertain and the past seems lost. The pyramids remind us that human beings are capable of extraordinary things, that we can leave our mark on the world, that our dreams do not have to die with us. You, listening to this, wherever you are, whatever challenges you face, you are part of that legacy. You are a link in a chain that stretches back to the first humans who looked up at the stars and you are a link that stretches forward to all the generations yet to come, who will inherit whatever you create, whatever you dream, whatever mark you leave on the world. You matter, your life matters, your dreams matter, just as the workers who built the pyramids mattered, even though we don't know their names. Let that thought comfort you now, as you surrender to sleep. The night deepens around you, the stars wheel slowly across the sky. Somewhere in Egypt, the pyramids stand in the moonlight, casting long shadows across the sand.
They have stood there for 5,000 years. They will stand there for 5,000 more, and beyond, and beyond. Nothing lasts forever. Even the pyramids will one day crumble, worn away by time and weather and the slow erosion of centuries. But for now, they endure. For now, they testify. For now, they remind us that something in the human spirit refuses to be forgotten. Close your eyes. Let your breath come slow and easy. Let the tension drain from your body, from your shoulders, your neck, your face. Let your mind become quiet, like the surface of a still pond. You are safe. You are at peace. The ancient stones keep their vigil, protecting the secrets of the ages. And you are drifting now, drifting like a boat on the Nile, drifting like a feather on the wind, drifting like a star in the sky. Sleep is coming. It is close now. You can feel it at the edge of your awareness, a gentle darkness, a soft embrace. Let it come. Let it carry you away. Let it hold you through the night. And as you drift, as you float on the gentle currents of approaching sleep, the story continues, because there is always more to tell. There is always another chamber to explore, another passage to wander, another secret waiting to be discovered. The pyramids are patient. They have waited thousands of years for you. They can wait a little longer while you settle deeper into your pillow, while your breathing grows slower, while the weight of the day falls away like sand through your fingers. But perhaps you want to stay a moment longer. Perhaps you want to hear one more story, learn one more secret before sleep claims you completely. Very well, let us go deeper still, because we have not yet spoken of the sounds within the pyramid, the sounds that echo through the chambers like whispers from another time. Modern researchers have discovered something extraordinary about the king's chamber. When you stand within its granite walls and produce a sound, any sound, a hum, a chant, a single note, something magical happens. The room resonates. It vibrates at a specific frequency, around 111 hertz. This is the same frequency that has been found to affect human brain activity, to induce states of meditation and deep relaxation, to alter consciousness in subtle but measurable ways. Was this intentional? Did the ancient Egyptians understand something about sound and its effects on the human mind that we are only now beginning to rediscover. Imagine standing in that chamber 5,000 years ago, surrounded by priests and initiates, chanting together in perfect harmony. The walls would have hummed with sound. The air itself would have seemed to vibrate with power. The boundaries between the physical world and the spiritual realm would have grown thin, transparent, permeable. Perhaps this was the true purpose of the pyramid, not just a tomb, but a machine for altering consciousness, a device for opening doorways that normally remain closed, an instrument for communicating with the gods themselves. Let that thought settle over you like a warm blanket. Let the hum of those ancient voices carry you deeper into relaxation. You can almost hear it, can't you? That low, resonant tone, vibrating through stone and time, reaching you here, now, in this quiet moment before sleep. Let it soothe you, let it calm you, let it carry you deeper. And speaking of sounds, let us consider the wind. The wind that blows across the Giza plateau carries its own music. It has blown there for millions of years, since long before the pyramids were built, and it will continue to blow long after they have crumbled to dust. But for now, the wind and the pyramids are partners in an ancient dance. When the wind blows from the north, which it often does, it creates a low moaning sound as it passes over and around the massive structures. This sound was well known to the ancient Egyptians, who believed it was the voice of the pyramids themselves, speaking to those who knew how to listen. On quiet nights when the tourist buses have departed and the vendors have closed their stalls, you can still hear this sound, a deep bass note, almost below the threshold of human hearing, felt as much as heard. It is the pyramid singing, joining its voice to the eternal symphony of wind and stone. Some nights, when the conditions are just right, the wind creates strange harmonics as it passes through the entrance passage and into the chambers beyond. These sounds can be eerie, unsettling to those who don't understand their source, but to those who know, they are beautiful, a reminder that even the most massive and solid of structures can be made to sing. Close your eyes and imagine that sound, the wind of the desert, carrying the scent of sand and time, passing over stones that have felt its touch for 5 millennia. It is a lonely sound, but also a comforting one. It speaks of permanence, of endurance, of things that last. Let it be your lullaby tonight. And now, let us descend once more into the depths. We have spoken of the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, of the grand gallery and the subterranean chamber. But there are other spaces within the Great Pyramid, spaces that are less well known but equally fascinating. There are the so-called relieving chambers above the king's chamber, 5 low spaces stacked one upon another, separated by massive granite beams. These chambers were designed to distribute the weight of the pyramid above, preventing the roof of the king's chamber from collapsing under the millions of tons of stone pressing down upon it. These chambers are remarkable for another reason. On their walls, ancient workers left graffiti, the names of their work gangs, painted in red ochre on the rough stone. These are among the only written records we have from inside the pyramid itself. The names are evocative, full of pride and perhaps a touch of humor. Friends of Khufu, drunkards of Menkaure, the vigorous gang. These were the names the workers gave themselves, the identities they adopted as they labored together on the greatest construction project the world had ever seen. Can you imagine them? Young men, mostly, strong from years of physical labor, proud of their skills and their contribution to this magnificent structure. They carved these names into the stone as a kind of signature, a way of saying, we were here, we built this, remember us, and we do remember them. After 5,000 years, we still speak their names. There is something deeply moving about that, isn't there? These ordinary workers, their lives otherwise lost to history, achieving a kind of immortality through their work. They could not have known that their graffiti would survive for millennia, that scholars would study their words, that people all around the world would learn about the Friends of Khufu. But here we are, and there they are, still speaking to us across the vast gulf of time. Let that thought comfort you as you drift towards sleep. Your life, too, leaves traces. Your work, your love, your kindness. These things ripple outward, touching others in ways you may never know. You, too, are building something that will outlast you. And now, a mystery within a mystery. In 1993, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot into one of the narrow shafts extending from the Queen's chamber. These shafts, barely 8 inches square, had puzzled researchers for centuries. They were too small for a person to crawl through, and they didn't seem to lead anywhere. But Gantenbrink's robot, named Upawat II, after the Egyptian god Opener of the Ways, made a startling discovery. After climbing more than 200 feet through the narrow shaft, the robot encountered a small limestone door with 2 copper handles. A door inside the pyramid leading to what? The discovery electrified the world. What lay behind that door? A hidden chamber? A treasure room? The long-lost burial chamber of Khufu himself? Speculation ran wild. It took nearly a decade before technology advanced enough to explore further. In 2002, a new robot drilled a small hole through the door and inserted a tiny camera. What it found was another door. Behind the first door was a small space, only about 8 inches deep, and then another blocking stone. The mystery had deepened rather than been solved, and there, for many years, the matter rested. The pyramids had revealed one secret, only to replace it with another, like a magician performing an endless series of tricks. But in 2011, yet another robot, this one named Jetty, after the magician who, according to legend, knew the secrets of the pyramid, explored further. It maneuvered around the second blocking stone and discovered a small chamber behind it. And in that chamber, read hieroglyphic marks, ancient writing never before seen by human eyes, hidden in the heart of the pyramid for 5,000 years. What do these marks say? Researchers are still studying them, still trying to decipher their meaning. Perhaps they are construction marks left by workers. Perhaps they are religious texts, prayers for the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. Perhaps they are something else entirely, a message, a warning, a secret meant to be discovered at some distant future time. We don't know, not yet. The pyramid keeps its secrets close. Let that mystery settle into your mind, like sand settling to the bottom of a still pool. You don't need to solve it. You don't need to understand it. You only need to let it be what it is, a reminder that there are still wonders in this world, still mysteries waiting to be unraveled, still secrets hidden in the shadows. And perhaps that is the greatest gift the pyramids offer us. Not answers, but questions. Not certainty, but wonder. Not knowledge, but the humbling realization that there is so much we do not know, so much we may never know. In a world that often seems to have been mapped and measured and explained, the pyramids remind us that mystery still exists, that there are depths we have not plumbed, heights we have not scaled, chambers we have not entered. And isn't that a comforting thought? Isn't it reassuring to know that the universe still holds surprises, that reality is stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined? Let that wonder wrap around you like a cloak. Let it carry you towards sleep. And now, let us speak of the stones themselves. The pyramid contains approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. Each block weighs, on average, about 2.5 tons, though some weigh considerably more. The granite beams above the king's chamber, for example, weigh up to 80 tons each. But the stone most commonly used was limestone, quarried from the Giza plateau itself. The ancient Egyptians were practical people, and they chose to build with the material that was closest to hand. Why haul stone from far away when the ground beneath your feet was made of exactly what you needed. The limestone of the Giza Plateau is a pale cream color composed of the compressed shells of tiny sea creatures that lived millions of years ago when this land was beneath the ocean. When you look at a block of pyramid limestone, if you look closely enough, you can sometimes see the fossils of these ancient creatures, their shapes preserved in the stone. Think about that for a moment. The pyramids are made of the bodies of creatures that lived and died millions of years before humans even existed. The shells of ancient shellfish, compressed and transformed over eons, were carved and stacked to create one of the greatest monuments of human civilization. There is a poetry in that, isn't there? Life becoming stone, stone becoming monument, monument becoming symbol. Everything connected, everything part of a great chain of being that stretches back to the dawn of time. The ancient Egyptians would have appreciated this poetry. They understood, perhaps better than we do, that everything is connected, that life and death are part of the same great cycle, that what dies does not disappear, but is transformed, becoming something new, something different, something that may serve purposes undreamed of by the original. Let that thought relax you. You are part of this great cycle too. You are connected to everything that has ever lived, to the ancient seas and the creatures that swam in them, to the stones of the pyramid and the workers who placed them, to the stars in the sky and the sand in the desert. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are part of something vast and beautiful and eternal. And speaking of the workers, let us return to their village one last time. Archaeologists have now excavated much of the settlement where the pyramid builders lived, and what they have found has revolutionized our understanding of life in ancient Egypt. These were not slaves, as was once believed. They were skilled workers, well fed and well cared for, proud of their contribution to the great project. Their village was a bustling community with bakeries and breweries, with medical facilities and administrative buildings, with homes and workshops and streets. The bakeries have been particularly revealing. Researchers have found evidence of industrial-scale bread production, huge ovens capable of producing thousands of loaves per day. The bread was made from emmer wheat, ground fine, and mixed with water, then baked in conical molds over open fires. And bread was not the only food. The workers ate beef and mutton, fish and fowl. They drank beer, a staple of the ancient Egyptian diet, nutritious and only mildly alcoholic. They had access to vegetables and fruits, to onions and garlic, to dates and figs. This was not the diet of slaves. This was the diet of valued workers, people who were essential to the success of the project and who were treated accordingly. Evidence of medical care has also been found. Bones that were broken and healed, teeth that were treated for decay, even signs of surgery, skulls that were drilled to relieve pressure, with healing around the edges, indicating that the patient survived the procedure. The ancient Egyptians were skilled physicians. They had developed treatments for a wide variety of ailments based on centuries of careful observation and experimentation. The workers at Giza had access to this medical knowledge, another indication that they were valued and cared for. And there were entertainers too, musicians and dancers, storytellers and acrobats. The workers were not only fed and healed, but entertained, their spirits lifted after long days of hard labor. Can you imagine it? After a day of hauling stones and fitting blocks, gathering in the evening with your work gang, sharing food and drink, listening to music and stories, the camaraderie, the shared purpose, the knowledge that you were building something that would last forever. These were people like you and me. They had hopes and fears, joys and sorrows. They loved and were loved. They laughed and they wept. They lived lives that were in many ways remarkably similar to our own, and then they died, and their bodies were buried, and the centuries passed, and the millennia, and the world changed in ways they could never have imagined. But their work remained. The pyramid they built still stands, still testifies to their skill and their dedication, let that thought comfort you as you drift towards sleep. The work of your hands matters, the love in your heart matters, the life you are living matters. Even if you never build a pyramid, you are building something, a legacy of kindness and connection that will outlast your physical form.